Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good morning to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. Also wishing every one of you out there a very happy Choti Diwali. I hope all of you are celebrating it in full festivities. We are back again to analyze a day's Hindu newspaper to pick up the most important topics. However, before we do that, a quick announcement. We will not have the Hindu Newspaper Analysis session tomorrow on account of Diwali. So tomorrow is a holiday from our end. The next day that you will be joining us here live at 10 a.m. would be day after tomorrow, that is on Monday. So please do make a note of that. But that doesn't really mean that your learning should stop. Make sure that tomorrow also, if you do have some time, do give some time to revision, do give some time to maybe CSAT or any practice question. But we won't be here tomorrow on our YouTube channel. We'll be coming back day after tomorrow. Let's come to the topics that we have taken up for today's discussion. There are a bunch of topics that we have taken up. First, starting with again the ongoing saga of the office of the governor not utilizing their post in favor of the state government, delaying the bills continuously. Now the Supreme Court has weighed in. The Supreme Court has taken cognizance of the matter, especially in case of Tamil Nadu. If you remember, in the past few days, we have discussed how Tamil Nadu, Kerala, both of these states have gone to the Supreme Court, alleging that their governors are delaying the giving assent part to the bill because they don't want the schemes of the state government to follow up. So we'll be discussing what did the Supreme Court say. The second topic is about the government's attempt to revamp our criminal justice system. As you know, the government of India has been in the process of replacing a bunch of very important acts. Indian Evidence Act, the CRPC, Indian Penal Code, etc. There's an article about that. The article talks about some of the loopholes, some of the things that are still not clear in the new version of the laws. Then the third article is about something interesting that happened in the WTO, which was not really seen in most of the newspapers in India. We'll be discussing what that is. Basically, in simple terms, the US just a few days back withdrew its demand from the WTO, where they were demanding earlier sharing of data in terms of e-commerce, that every country should get their hands on each other's data. Then the fourth article is about stubble burning, the problem that the entire North India, especially Delhi, is facing with high levels of pollution. And then just one news story from the prelims exam point of view about the Vibrant Village program. The Home Minister has announced that a lot more villages will be covered under this, and we will see high-class infrastructure with the government announcing more and more advances in the capital expenditure for these villages. Let's begin with the very first article then. The first article from the front page of the Hindu newspaper is again continuing saga of the governors in multiple states not giving assent to the state government bills, delaying the assent time and time again without even giving any reasoning. If you remember, in the past few days, we have discussed how first Tamil Nadu and then Kerala had gone to the Supreme Court against their own governor, saying that the governors are violating the fundamental rights of their residents. Why? Because they are not allowing certain schemes of the government to be passed by not giving assent to the bill. What these states were demanding. The demand of these states, especially Tamil Nadu in this case, was they wanted the Supreme Court to fix a time limit. They wanted the Supreme Court to say that there has to be a time limit within which the governor must give assent to the bill. Because as you know, in the Constitution of India, there is no time limit given for signing of the bills to governor or the president. If you compare that, in case of American president, in America, the American president has a 10-day time limit. Within 10 days, the president must give assent to the bill. And if the president does not give assent to the bill in 10 days in America, on the 11th day, the bill is considered to have been passed automatically. But in India, we do not have that case. In India, since there is no time limit, that is where the concept of pocket veto becomes relevant. The problem is, in most of the cases, the governors, which are appointed through the central government's recommendations, the governors are not giving assent to very important state bills. Now, what has the Supreme Court said? Has the Supreme Court given a time limit? No. Supreme Court has still not given the time limit that within which you have to sign on the bills. However, they have criticized the governors for their conduct. The Supreme Court has said that the governors cannot just keep sitting on the bills that have been passed by the House. The governors must realize their constitutional responsibility. The governors must realize that this is not an office where they can act on their own discretion. In most of the matters, they will have to act on the advice given by the State Council of Ministers, and thus they cannot take the freedom, the liberty to just keep on thinking about the bill. The Supreme Court has said that there are a bunch of bills right now that are pending at the Governor of Tamil Nadu's office. There are about 12 crucial bills as per the Tamil Nadu government, which are curtailing the day-to-day functioning of the state of Tamil Nadu. And that is why the Supreme Court has said it is a serious concern. Again, what has the Supreme Court said in the next step? They have said that we will issue a formal notice to the Government of India through the Home Ministry to respond. So again, they have not given any time limit. The Supreme Court says that Article 200 of the Constitution, although does not give a time limit, but it does mandate the governor to act as soon as possible after the bills have been passed by the legislature. And you cannot just keep the bills pending. The lawyer appearing from the side of the government of Tamil Nadu has said that about 10 of the 14 posts in Tamil Nadu Public Service Commission, including that of the chairperson, are vacant. Why? Because it is the governor who has to sign on the appointment order, but the governor is just not signing on this order. The Supreme Court again has declined. We will not give any deadline because this is not our job. They have said that if the government wants to include this provision, they can amend the constitution to provide a time limit to the governor. But at least in this case, no time limit has been given by the Supreme Court so far. What did the Supreme Court say apart from this? The Supreme Court said you can't sit on the judgment over it and say that Legislative Assembly session is unconstitutional. Now, these kind of quotes that you see here, especially the things that we have seen in bold letters, you can use these quotes very well in the mains examination. For example, you can quote that the Supreme Court has clearly said that the governor cannot just continuously sit over judging whether the bill passed by the assembly is constitutional or not. Supreme Court also said if we allow this power to the governor, then what will happen? Should we continue to be a parliamentary form of government or not? Because again, as per the Supreme Court, the way that the governors of these states are behaving, this goes against the tenets of our parliamentary democracy. Now, I'll tell you something interesting. In the past, there have been certain recommendations given on whether or not there should be a time limit set up for the governor to give assent to the bills. I'll give you a few examples. For example, the Supreme Court of India in the very famous Nabam Rebia and Bamang Felix versus the Deputy Speaker case said that the governor's discretion under Article 200 is limited to deciding whether a bill should be reserved for the President's consideration or not. If you remember, when the governor receives a bill from the state legislature, he or she has multiple options to give assent to the bill, to use suspensive veto, that is to send the bill back once, to use pocket veto, or to send the bill for the recommendation of the President of India. The Supreme Court clearly said that only if the governor wants to send the bill to the President of India, only in that case the governor can act on his or her own discretion. On all the other cases, the governor must abide by the advice given by the State Council of Ministers, which clearly is not happening in this case. Interestingly, there have been certain commissions that have recommended setting a time limit, like the Panchik Commission in the year 2010. They recommended it is necessary to prescribe a time limit within which the governor should take the decision whether or not assent should be given to the bill or not, or whether or not the bill has to be sent to the President. Again, Panchik Commission did not say what time limit, but it did say that it is advisable to have at least a certain time limit. National Commission to Review the Working of the Constitution also talked about time limit. They said there should be a time limit of about 4 months within which the governor should take a decision. Clearly, these recommendations have not been accepted by the government, and the reason is simple. Every party that comes to power at the center government level behaves very differently as compared to how they behaved when they were in the opposition. When you're in the opposition, you demand a lot of things, but when you are a part of the government, then you want to utilize those things for your own benefit. And it happens with every political party. You don't expect a political party who is in power to give away their powers. One of the big powers that the central government has is kind of control the working of the governor through appointment and the removal process. Because the governor's appointment, governor's removal happens through the central government, through the President of India, with no role of the state government. So it is very, very difficult to expect that any party that is ruling at the center government level would really take any action in this regard and take away or restrict any powers of the governor of the state. This was our first article. It is still an ongoing saga. We'll have to see what the Supreme Court finally tells, whether they take some action against the governor, and what do we see as the outcome. The second article is regarding the government's attempt to revamp our criminal justice system, to bring in the new versions of the Indian Penal Code, Indian Evidence Act, the IPC, the CRPC. Now, the author here says that the laws that the government is trying to replace is a good attempt because our laws are old, many of these are obsolete. But the fact is, even in the current form, the draft that the government has prepared, it has certain lacunas, it has certain issues which the government must address. In this article, the author talks about 7 issues or 7 areas which need more clarification. See, when you read about all these acts which have been drafted by the government of India, these are all very, very long. There are thousands and thousands of provisions. So, sorry, it's not possible for you to read the entire thing, to remember all the provisions. So rather than that, rather than reading the entire Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, what you have to do is, rather than that, from these kind of articles, from these kind of authors, collect pointers which they think are important, and that will be helpful for you from the examination point of view. So in this part, the author here again gives 7 pointers to think about. He says there are 7 issues that still remain unresolved. Let's see what are those issues. First issue, these bills exclude the civil laws. Means these bills that actually are replacing the CRPC, IPC, Indian Evidence Act, only talk about the criminal justice system. They don't talk about the civil laws. But on the other hand, the laws that they are trying to replace, the Code of Criminal Procedure, IPC, Indian Evidence Act, it did have some civil provisions as well. For example, the CRPC includes provisions about the maintenance given to the wife and children after the divorce. These kind of things are not included. Also, it allows compounding of some offences of the affected person, which means the accused person is acquitted. Now, if you remember a couple of days back, we did discuss the concept of compoundable offences and non-compoundable offences. Just to remind you, compoundable offence basically means something that can be negotiated out of the court. You committed an offence, you asked for forgiveness, you asked for an apology, the other person said, okay, I'm fine with it, I am accepting your apology, the case will be closed. That is called compoundable offence. So in some cases, this will be a compoundable offence. For example, if a person who is cheating is acquitted if the person says, okay, I am ready to forgive you. So there is a lot of confusion about whether or not the new version of these laws will have civil provisions or not. On paper, they were expected to have only criminal provisions, but there are certain civil provisions that have to be included. Second pointer that the author is pointing towards, whether these bills will create a reformative system or a punitive system, that is still not clear. Now, what do you mean by this? The simple idea is that any country's criminal system or prison system is supposed to be to reform the person and not to punish the person. Punitive means to take revenge. For example, if you committed a crime, you did something wrong, you hurt someone, you should be hurt in return. That will be a punitive system. Reform means that you did something wrong because you did not know what is right, what is wrong, so we will reform you, we will teach you what is right. In any modern democracy, the criminal justice system is supposed to be reformist, to reform the person. The jails, the prisons are supposed to be reformist, not punitive in action. But in this case, again, the author is saying that there is no clarity on that. Although there is a provision of community service as a form of punishment, but many minor offenses are still not compoundable and they will have to be resolved in the court only. What do you mean by this? In Western countries, we have a concept of community service. Community service means, let's say you committed a crime, a very small menial crime, okay? For example, let's say you slapped someone or you hurt someone, or let's say you destroyed some public property. You did not know, you painted on a wall, this is an offense. So what happened was, rather than putting you in jail, you will be asked to do community service of, let's say, 10 hours or 20 hours. Means for 10 hours or 20 hours, you'll have to serve the community. How? It can be anything. It can be like for 10 hours, you have to clean the garbage on the roads. Or for 20 hours, you have to help the poor people, go to an orphanage, help them out. This is the concept of community service. In Western countries, it's a very common thing that for very low menial offenses, people are given community service as a punishment. In India, that is not the case. Now the new laws try to include this option as well, that community service can be given. This is a good thing, because with community servicing, you are trying to reform the person. But on the other hand, the author is saying that many of the small offenses are not made compoundable. Means many of the small offenses cannot be settled out of court. If you have to really reform the person, allow these offenses to be settled outside the court only. But in the new version, in the new draft, you are expecting that even the smallest of the cases will be solved within the court. And that becomes a problem. Then point number 3. Whether maintenance of public order and process of criminal prosecution should be the same law. So basically, for example, right now, if you see, district magistrate has a lot of powers. District magistrate has a power to decide on the arrest of the person or not. District magistrate also has a power to maintain law and order. District magistrate, for example, can give an order to impose curfew, etc. Whether these should be the same law, whether these laws should be different, there's a debate about that. That has not been clarified in the new version. Fourth important pointer as per the author, various directions of Supreme Court have not been included in the new version. For example, directions about arrest, bail, under what circumstances bail should be given, under what circumstances people should be arrested or not arrested. All these are ideas that have been given by the Supreme Court from time to time, but they have not been included in the new draft version. Next, the bills try to ensure consistency of implementation. Means what's happening is you are leaving too much at the discretion of the judges. For example, there are offenses such as if a person lives with a woman and falsely promises that I will marry you, so live with me, but does not marry her, that can be punished with a jail sentence of up to 10 years. Now the problem is, if you say that for this crime you can be punished for jail up to 10 years, it's a very, very wide range. It now depends on the judge. The judge can give you jail for 1 day also, and the judge can give you jail for 10 years as well. Anything in between will be as per the law. You are leaving too much at the discretion of the judge. You are not telling the judge under what circumstances what punishment has to be given. When you leave too much at the discretion of the judge, it leaves to a lot of scope of corruption. This is where the corruption can come in. This is where the people can try to bribe the judge that, okay, I'll give you some money, give me lesser punishment, because you can do that. It is as per the law. You can give any punishment up to 10 years, only give me 1 day, 10 days, 1 month, etc. That becomes a problem. Point number 6. IPC specifies that a child below 7 years cannot be accused of an offense. The present law is any child under 7 years cannot be accused of an offense because they have not developed the mental ability to know what are the consequences of their action. It also gives exemption until 12 years of age if the child is found to have not attained the ability to understand the nature and the consequences of his conduct. So again, up till 7 years, all the children are exempted. Up till 12 years, children who have not developed proper mental capabilities are also exempted. These thresholds should be raised or not. There has to be a proper study conducted on it, which has not been done so far. That is where again the new draft version is lacking. 7th, whether gender related offenses should be updated or not. For example, in the new version, there is still no mention of a possibility of a rape on a male. There is only a possibility of a rape on a female as per the law. Also, the new law does not have any provision about marital rape. These are some of the topics that have been a lot under discussion in the society. As we are moving towards a more liberal, a more advanced democracy, it was expected that the new version of the law that is expected to revamp our existing criminal justice system would take away all of these disparities and would actually have concrete laws on all these bases. But as per the author, these are some of the loopholes that still exist. That is why it's good that it has not been passed so far. There is a winter session coming in of the parliament. So maybe in the winter session, we might see discussion on all these topics. Again, this is a very optimistic feeling because usually we don't have discussion these days in the parliament. All you have is people throwing something at each other, people being suspended, people not really doing anything parliamentary. But anyways, it's expected and hopefully there will be some discussion on all these provisions and the other possible loopholes of the new versions of the law. The author here does not finish up. The author says that there are some other things as well. For example, there is overlap with certain special laws. So basically, what is the idea? See, the British enacted the IPC, that is the Indian Penal Code, in 1960. So Indian Penal Code was this big law that talked about what are the different punishments that will be given for what kind of offenses. If you do this, this punishment will be given. If you do this, that punishment will be given, so on and so forth. After that, what happened? A lot of other laws were also made. So there was a duplication of that. There was a lot of duplication as such. For example, if you look at the Legal Metrology Act of 2009, it was obviously, it's very recent, much later as compared to the IPC. It says that provisions of the IPC about weights and measures will not apply. The bill removes all these provisions. Now the problem is, again, when you have multiple laws, many of these even talking about different penalties to be given. In IPC, for example, you might have a 5-year penalty for a certain offense. In some other law, you might have a 4-year penalty for the same offense. Those disparities also have to be removed. For example, the bill that we are talking about, the Legal Metrology Act, it also overlaps with other acts such as food adulteration, adulterated drugs, bonded labor, rash driving, etc. Now, what do you do to resolve these issues? Has the government taken enough care, enough consideration while making the draft version of the new laws? This is a question that the author is asking. The author also says that the definitions in many cases are missing. For example, if you look at the draft bill that is replacing the IPC, it says that a person suffering from mental illness will be a general exception from being an offender. Meaning that if there's a person who is mentally ill, that person cannot be punished. This is in fact a defense that is used by many lawyers even today. Even today you see people committing heinous crimes. Their lawyers try to prove that the person is not mentally stable, they did not know the consequences of the action. The definition of mental illness here is the same that is given in the Mental Healthcare Act of 2007. Now, the problem here is this act says that the medical treatment to a person that is suffering from mental illness excludes mental retardation or incomplete development, but includes abuse of alcohol or drugs. Let's understand what is the point all about. So again, any person who is suffering from mental illness cannot be punished. Fine. The problem is what is included in the definition of mental illness. In the definition of mental illness, the use of or abuse of alcohol and drugs is included. Means if there's a person who is addicted to drugs, who is addicted to alcohol, that person will be considered as mentally ill. So that person will not be punished. However, on the other hand, if a person is suffering from mental retardation, if a person is suffering from mental retardation or if a person is suffering from incomplete development of mind, that is not included in this definition of mental illness. So this person can still be punished. This is again a problem that has not been rectified. Mental illness, the definition is not clear. You have included the abuse of drugs and alcohol as a form of mental illness, but you have not included mental retardation or incomplete development as a form of mental illness. So you are giving the benefit of the doubt to someone who is into alcohol and drugs, but you are not willing to give the same benefit of the doubt to someone who is suffering from mental retardation. These are some of the issues that, as per the author, still need to be resolved. I'm sure all of you know by now, but just a reminder, there are 3 laws that the government is planning to replace. First, the Indian Penal Code of 1860. Second, the CRPC or the Code of Criminal Procedure. And the third is the Indian Evidence Act. These are the 3 that are pretty old laws in India. The oldest one being the IPC, then the Indian Evidence Act, and the CRPC being more later. These 3 will be replaced by the Government of India. Replaced by what? Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita Bill, Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita, and then Bharatiya Sakshya Bill. Please understand, preparing for the UPSC does not mean that you have to go into details of each and every provision of these, because these will be too long, too elaborate. If you are preparing for a law exam, that makes more sense. But if you are preparing for the UPSC, you don't need to go into too much detail of all the provisions. The important provisions that we have discussed here or that are being pointed out by other articles, just go through those and you would be covered very well for the exam. You will not be randomly asked about any provision in between this by the UPSC, so you don't have to worry about that. For example, the Nyaya Sanhita has 356 sections, Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita has 533 sections, Bharatiya Sakshya Sanhita has 170 sections. So again, if you total this up, it goes upwards of 1000. So it doesn't really make sense for you to remember all these provisions just to prepare for the exam. Now we are coming to article number 3. The third article that we have is an article based on a news that was not really covered widely, at least in the Indian media. But there's an article written on it. The problem here is, if you read this article by yourself without having a background knowledge, you will not be able to understand what is the author trying to say. So let's first understand the background knowledge of what is the author trying to say here. What is this article all about? So that you can actually understand this. So what happened was, the article is about something that happened in 2019. So 2019, Donald Trump is the American president, right? Now in 2019, what happened was, America made a demand in the WTO. The demand was mainly about how e-commerce functions. There was a demand on e-commerce resolution. So basically the demand was that America wanted that the data that e-commerce has, or data about the customers, data about how the people are buying stuff in one country from the other country, USA wanted the sharing of all that data. USA wanted that all the data should be available. Why? Because they wanted even data to be given national treatment. They wanted that if, for example, let's say there is a company, let's say Amazon, American company that is working in India, all their data should be shared with the American government. They should get to know who is buying, for how much are they buying, and not just data about the customers, about their buying patterns. They also wanted to ensure that the nations should not be allowed to make law on data localization. You know what is data localization? We have discussed this earlier. Data localization basically means, for example, if an Indian is using Facebook or Instagram or these kind of apps, whatever data you upload on these apps, your photos, your videos, etc., they get stored on the servers of these companies. Most of these servers of these companies are not based in India. They are based in America, they are based in other European countries, etc., so that our government cannot control this. The government of India wants our data of our citizens to be stored within India. That is called data localization. So every government wants data localization. They want the data of their citizens to be within the country so that it is safe, so that our laws apply to it. America wanted that no, data localization should not be forced upon the companies. So what did America say in 2019? Number one, data should be shared. Number two, countries should not be allowed to have data localization. Not just this, any nation, any technology that is being used by that nation's government, that should be open to everyone. We should also get to know the source of it. All this was a demand that America had been making in WTO since 2019. Why? Because America thought that it will help them gain better knowledge about how the countries buy or how the people in different countries buy, so that they can make their products accordingly and they can keep an eye on everyone. They can spy on everyone. That was the intention of America. Now what has happened is recently, very recently, America has withdrawn their demand. So this is what has happened basically. America made all these demands in 2019 that we want this resolution on e-commerce to be passed. We want every country to support this. There should be no data localization. There should be open sharing of data, etc. This is what America was demanding. Developing countries such as India were always against this demand. We never wanted this demand to be passed. Thankfully now America has also withdrawn this demand, and that is why this article has been written. So basically, America has been planning what the author calls digital colonization. If you look at most of the big tech companies in the world, look at Google, look at Microsoft, look at Apple, look at Facebook or Meta, whatever you want to call it, look at X. All of these are of American origin. All of these have humongous data of people all around the world. These companies, their valuation is more than the GDP of big nations. I'll give you a very simple example so that you can actually understand the scale of these companies. India's GDP is close to right now, let's say, 3.75 trillions. This is India's GDP. Close to 3.75 trillion. Do you know, if you look at the valuation of Apple the company, Apple's valuation is now over $2 trillion. Just one company. Just imagine this. Apple as a company has a valuation of over $2 trillion. So imagine the impact that such companies have, impact that they have, especially in smaller countries around the world, where they can bully the government into not accepting what the government is demanding. These big tech companies have to be regulated. Countries such as India want them to be regulated. We want to put restrictions on the use of their data. America does not want that. America wants open freedom to be given to these companies. Nations such as India, South Africa have been demanding that American resolution like this should not be passed. But thankfully, America has withdrawn from this. Although the world is shocked, why did America withdraw? But thankfully, America has withdrawn from this. They are now not demanding that smaller countries cannot put regulation. They have said, okay, smaller countries, developing countries should be allowed to put regulations on data localization, etc. This is seen as a win for the world, that is, the developing countries come from. Now, there is also an argument that maybe it is the China factor that has forced the Americans to withdraw their demand. Why? Because earlier, the time that America made this demand that there should be free flow of data, we should be allowed to get as much data as possible, they were hoping to use this data for their own business. Now they fear that Chinese can use this data even better than them. Chinese companies are now rivaling the American companies. There are a lot of big tech companies that are working in China as well. China is a part of the WTO now. It was made a part of WTO in 2001. Since then, it has been able to gain a lot of space in the international market. The US may be fearing, as per the author again, not as per me, but as per the author, the US may be fearing that this sharing of data may be even more beneficial for China than the US. So now they have reduced their demand. They have said that no, let us not have so much sharing of data, because maybe the Chinese will misuse it much more than us. Chinese anyways, as you know, have been accused of stealing data, have been accused of stealing information. For example, you all might have heard about a company called Huawei. In India, now you don't see many Huawei products. earlier, if you go back 10, 12 years, we used to have Huawei mobile phones also. The main product of Huawei is they make those big servers, routers, switches, etc. They are the world's leading telecommunication equipment manufacturing company. So what happened was a few years back when the government of India was testing the 5G technology in India. So we had to conduct trials. For conducting 5G trials, you require special equipment. Only Huawei was making such equipment at that point of time. So Huawei was participating with many Indian companies for this testing, but Government of India announced that no, we will not allow Huawei to take part. Why? Because Huawei is a Chinese company. It is said that their owners are very close to the Chinese government. There were allegations that Huawei products steal your information, they share the information with the Chinese government. So these are allegations that China faces time and time again. So US realizes this, so US has thought that rather than demanding sharing of data at the WTO, we will not do that. Rather, America has started their own smaller initiatives. For example, there is the IPEA where India is also a member, Indo-Pacific Economic Partnership for Prosperity. There is the America's Partnership for Economic Prosperity. So what America is doing is, they are still trying to have data sharing, etc., but not at the WTO. Keeping China out of it, they are making smaller groups and they are thinking of how we can actually share the data, share information within this smaller group. This is what America has been thinking going forward. Now, the American policy decision, again, is a very good thing for the developing world. As per the author, the developing world now should take advantage and make policies against or trying to regulate this big tech to save their national data, to ensure that their data does not get into the hands of the other nations. See, we are anyways living in an era where data is extremely important. You would have realized this many times. You are, let's say, talking to a friend, not even on the phone. You're sitting in a room talking to a friend, talking to a family member. Let's say you're talking about a car or a bike. You will see after some time, you will automatically start seeing the ad of that car or bike. How? The phone that you have, even when you're not talking on the phone, even if the phone is just kept by your side, they are listening 24/7. Whatever you're talking, the phone is listening, and that is how the ads run. That is how you will see the ads on your email, you will see the ads on the website that you visit. Anything that you're talking about with your friends, with your parents, even not on the phone, obviously you will start seeing those ads. So again, data is used by these big tech companies to personalize the ads so that they can earn more and more revenue. This is where the nations such as the developing nations such as India, South Africa, African nations have to be very careful. They have to share their data, make sure their policies are highly regulated, and in this digital era, make sure that the data of the nation remains within the nation. Now, this e-commerce initiative of the WTO that we have been talking about, where America demanded in 2019 that data sharing should be allowed, India has never joined it. India has remained out of it. India has never joined the discussions here because we have always said, for us, data of our citizens is extremely important. We don't want to share it. See, if you look at other nations around the world, for them, India is a very attractive market. A market of close to 1.4 billion people, where people's income is increasing steadily, where people are ready to spend more money, where middle class is increasing. For America, for European companies, India is a very attractive market. So they would want to get as much data as possible. And for India, we cannot afford that. For our population taken together, huge data that is being generated should be used efficiently for our own services, because see, the more data you share, the more you are putting the privacy and the security of the person at risk. That is why India and other developing countries are happy that US has taken back the demand that they had been making to share all that data, and now they can put these regulations. There are a couple of examples of how the nations have tried to regulate these companies and save their data within themselves. China, for example, has a very strict cyber security law. Their law says very clearly that no data can leave the country. All data will have to be stored locally. That is why most of the social media apps that you use are not available in China. Do you know China has their own versions? China has their own version of, for example, Twitter. They have their own version of Facebook, etc. Because they don't want their data to be stored anywhere else. In fact, even African countries such as Rwanda has a very interesting Rwanda's data revolution policy. It's again based on the idea of national data sovereignty, that the country reserves the right over its data. Their data cannot be shared with anyone else without the government's permission. The next article that we have is on the problem of stubble burning, the problem that every one of you is now very, very familiar with. Every single year in the months of November, October end, we see the entire Delhi and many parts of North India covered with very, very dense pollution. Although there are a lot of factors contributing to it, but the focus mainly comes on stubble burning time and time again. What exactly is stubble burning? So basically, when you grow rice, paddy as it is called, how do you basically harvest, or how do you basically take out rice? So let's assume there's a farmer who has a large field. So the farmer cannot manually go and keep on taking out rice with hand, because that will take a lot of time. So there are machines, harvesting machines. What they do is basically you work those machines and they will basically keep on cutting all this paddy. The useful stuff will be cut that the farmers will use. The remaining stuff, the very small remaining plantation, those remaining stuff, that is called stubble. There is no use of it. The farmers have to destroy it, and the farmers have to destroy it very, very soon, because this is the season where they have to destroy it, because the wheat season is starting. That is how it works. The rice season ends, you have to destroy the remaining stubble, parali as it is called, and then you have to start sowing wheat. So within these 2 weeks, they have to destroy all of that. For them, the easiest and the best possible method for the farmers is to just burn it. They say that it also increases the fertility of the land, and this becomes a problem. Now, it's not that stubble burning only happens in this part of the year. It happens in April, May also in the next cycle. Again, when the wheat crop is harvested, you again have to basically burn your stubble and you have to start sowing the rice. But what happens is, at this time of the year, there is not very high wind movement. When you don't have very high wind movement, all these particles remain suspended in the air, especially around Delhi. And that really creates a big, big, big problem. That is, in short, the issue that we have been facing. Now, there are multiple reports that talk about the harmful impacts of air pollution. In fact, about 1.67 million Indians, it is 16.7 lakh Indians, have died prematurely in 2019 due to air pollution. Now, imagine, when the COVID-19 crisis started, all of us were so scared of COVID-19 crisis. The reality is many, many more people as compared to COVID-19 die because of air pollution. But we don't see any urgency there, because we have made up our minds that no, this is not something that we can tackle. Something that happens gradually, that deteriorates our health gradually, we don't really pay a lot of attention there. India ranks 8th in the list of countries with the worst air quality index. Out of the top 20 most polluted cities in the world, 14 are in India right now. That again adds up to the problem. Now, again, there are multiple sources of pollution. Stubble burning is not the only one, but it just accentuates the situation so much more. There is vehicular pollution, there is pollution from construction, there is dust particles. We have all these issues that have to be resolved in the long run. But because of stable wind, because the wind does not flow in this season especially, it makes it very, very bad in the months of October, November, due to burning of this remaining stubble cultivation. It usually is seen between September 15 and November 30. Now, there are different ways to look at it. Official data suggests that the instances of stubble burning have reduced if you compare to the last few years. In Punjab, they have reduced. In Haryana also, they have reduced. But again, the problem is just reducing it as compared to last year is not the solution to the problem. What have the governments been doing? The governments have been trying to find out new methods. Farmers say that the problem that they have is they don't want to burn this stubble, but they have no other option. Within a very limited time frame, they have to get rid of it so that they are ready for the next season of the wheat. So they have no other option. They have been trying to find out different systems. One interesting system is combine harvester machines. So one different system, a happy harvesting machine. I'll tell you what that machine is. So there is a machine that the government of Punjab, for example, is renting out to the farmers. That machine is that if you cut your paddy from that machine, it will take out the entire thing rather than leaving the stubble behind, and it will sow the wheat at the same time. So it can solve the problem, but the problem is those machines, again, number one, are not enough. Secondly, even after the government subsidy, their rents are not affordable to most of the farmers. Most of the farmers complain that they are not being given these machines on time. That again is a big problem. Again, these are expensive machines. Small farmers, marginal farmers that don't have a lot of money, they can't afford these machines. Only the big farmers can do that. So again, for them, the most cost effective way and the immediate way is to just use the stubble burning mechanism. The state governments have mandated that you cannot do this. They have made laws about it. They have been imposing fines also, but it has not really been able to solve the problem. Again, the government is trying to help the farmers with the CRM machines, with the surface seeders. But again, because of the scale of the problem and the time frame within which the farmers have to ensure that their fields are ready, the problem is still not being solved. Who to blame? You can blame the farmers. Obviously you can blame the government, you can blame any other things as well. But again, the interesting part is, and where we don't pay a lot of attention, it is happening in those places where there is paddy, means rice cultivation and wheat cultivation. So the problem and the root of it goes back to our eating patterns also. Means because we consume so much grains in our daily diet, the farmers, that is why, produce so much grains, which leads to this problem of stubble. That is where diversification of crops can play a very important role. Diversification of crops, forcing the farmers, encouraging them not to grow so much rice and wheat, to diversify, move towards vegetables, move towards fruit, move towards horticulture, move towards millets. That is why all of this is important. So you have to solve the problem by looking the entire story. You cannot just solve the problem by looking at the month of November, October, trying to ask the farmers not to burn this stubble, because you have to give them an alternative to it. You have to ensure that the stubble at the first place does not really arise. Also, when one ton of this straw is burnt, it releases 5.5 kg of nitrogen, 2.3 kg of phosphorus, 25 kg of potassium, and 1.2 kg of sulfur. It in fact produces a lot of harmful gases as well. There is about 60 kg of carbon monoxide, 1460 kg of carbon dioxide, there is ash, etc. that is produced after burning of this. So it has a lot of negative consequences. But again, just blaming one side and hoping that they will change how they work without giving them an alternative would not really solve the problem. Again, if you look at the reasons why farmers opt for stubble burning, mechanized agriculture, the use of that machine on the large farms that leaves the stubble behind. If it was done by hand, then the stubble would not have been left behind, it would have been taken out anyways. There is lack of awareness amongst the farmers. They are not realizing that their burning the soil will lead to problems such as killing of the friendly insects, organic matter, etc. The alternative mechanism, the happy seeder machine that the farmers are being offered, it is expensive. Even after government subsidy, it is still expensive. There is reduced usage of stubble. Again, the stubble cannot be used for many other purposes. Like the rice stubble that is being burned right now, it is not very helpful as a fodder for animals. Also, it has a very high silica content. The government policies, again, which are still encouraging rice and wheat because of MSP, that also is responsible because the farmers are just not diversifying their cropping enough. These were the mains exam article. Now just one simple article from the prelims point of view, that is about the Vibrant Village program. The Home Minister has announced that 168 villages along the China border will get road connectivity in a year. What is this all about? There is a project that the Government of India is running called the Vibrant Village program. The idea is villages which are on the border areas, especially on the China border areas, Infrastructure will be developed in these areas, all weather connectivity roads. The government is encouraging people as tourists to go and visit these areas to give livelihood to the people so that there can be much better public participation in these areas. This scheme covers Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim and Ladakh. Close to 3,000 villages will be covered here. The action plan about what development should take place in this area will be created by the district administration with the help of the Gram Panchayat. It will work separately apart from the border area development program. These are the objectives. Identify the villages, see the resources that they require, have a hub and spoke model for promotion, entrepreneurship, giving encouragement to the local population, setting up their own businesses, shops, etc., leverage the potential of tourism, and also give rise to economically agriculture business so that we can have villages that specialize in certain products. You can market those, make them famous with the help of NGOs, cooperatives, sell them in the market. The idea is to improve the quality of lives of people working in this area. This is the Vibrant Village program. There has been significant financial assistance given under this program by the Government of India. This brings us to the end of today's session. Again, reminding you, we have a holiday tomorrow on the account of the Diwali festival. We will be next meeting day after tomorrow, 10 a.m. on Monday. There are a couple of practice questions right here. Try and write answers to these. Move over to our Telegram channel right away to attempt the practice quiz. See if you have been able to remember whatever we have discussed. Thank you so much for joining in. Do join us next on Monday. Very, very happy Diwali once again. Stay safe and enjoy with your family. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.